What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So today, I wanted to talk about the Miami Heat and their offseason plans. This is a big one for them. They have a ton of free agents, a couple of big player options, a lot of cap space available if they want to sign somebody. Big decisions in Miami this offseason, coming after a pretty disappointing campaign for them this year. They obviously were in the finals last year and lost in the first round this time. Not only did they lose, they got swept by a team that they beat handily the year prior. So it doesn't help for their reputation of bubble frauds or whatever Twitter's going to call them, and I'll get to that. But they're in an interesting spot because they had so much promise last season and just didn't really deliver on that this year. And a lot of those players that were key in that finals run are potentially going to be leaving. So big decisions for the Heat this offseason. Let's get into it. So here's the cap sheet for them. As you can see, a ton of free agents. Lots of guys to deal with this offseason. Only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys who are on guaranteed money for next year. Other than that, could be a lot of turnover. So we'll get to everybody here. Let's start with Jimmy Butler, who has one more season and then a player option for the following year. Jimmy Butler's really good. I have the utmost faith in him that he will be able to contribute and produce at a very high level on, at least for, a couple more seasons, 3, 4, 5 more seasons. He's only 31 years old. I think he can still be productive well into his 30s. And so I'm not worried about Jimmy Butler. I'd assume that he wants to stick with the team. I think they've been good to him, and he seems like he's a good fit there. He seems like he's happy there. He chose to go there in free agency. So I think, it makes sense for both sides to want to keep Jimmy Butler around. But following this season, he can be a free agent. So there's always that to look out for. I don't think there's any really, realm of possibility of a trade unless things get really testy between some moves that the front office makes that he might not agree with. But I think they're committed to, wanting to keep him happy and keep him on the team. A lot of people are down on Jimmy Butler this year after he wasn't super great in the playoffs, but his run to the finals last year cemented him in the top 10 players in the league for me. I still think he's that good. Nothing that he did this season is going to take away from what I saw him do in the bubble last year. So I really like Jimmy Butler as a player. I think he's great, and I would assume that he's going to want to stick in Miami for at least a couple more years. And then we have 5 veterans who can all be free agents this offseason. 3 of them are already free agents, and 2 of them have the team option there. Of course, Victor Oladipo, Goran Dragic, Andre Iguodala, Trevor Ariza, and Nemanja Bjelica. Dragic and Iguodala have those big team options that the Heat signed them to. Obviously, you would expect them to maybe turn them down if they're going to want to open up some cap space to sign some players. It's a good layer of flexibility for the Heat because they can do 2 different things. Well, I guess 3 different things. One, they can just turn those options down and sign some different players in free agency. Or I guess you could turn them down and sign those guys back on maybe cheaper money. Or you can pick those options up in order to trade those players in order to match for somebody else making money. Dragic and Iguodala gets you to a max salary slot, so you throw those 2 together, picks, Tyler Hero, Precious Achiuwa, whoever you want, and you can realistically trade for any star who's available out there. So they can make a move for really any star there with those options, or you pick those options up and just keep them on the team. So there's that. Both those guys are getting up there in age. Dragic did not have a great season. He was really good in the bubble, and then obviously dealt with that injury, and then this past season he wasn't as good just because for whatever reason he's getting up there in age, he's dealing with nagging injuries, whatever. And then Andre Iguodala, of course, is a guy who has a proven track record and has won multiple titles, but he is 37 years old and slowing down clearly. But he's still a very valuable player to have on the team, in a veteran mentorship role, and he can produce on the court still a little bit. So it makes sense to want to keep both of these guys around, but that's a lot of money for each of them. So we'll see what Miami does, but it's good flexibility for them either way, whether or not they want to pick up these options and trade them, turn them down just to open up the cap space, or just keep the guys on the team for next year. They got a lot of options, and it's a good spot for them to be in. That's why they signed the contracts in the first place. Ariza and Bjelica are both okay. If they want to come back on minimums, then that's fine, I think. But it's not the end of the world. Both those guys are getting older and have declined a little bit over the past couple of seasons. Ariza is not going to be that glue guy that he was for a lot of really good teams over his career anymore. But I think on a minimum deal, you can have him as your 8th or 9th guy off the bench, and that's not a bad option for you. And then Bjelica also as well is a pretty good shooter. And he kind of had a downturn when he was with Miami this year, but he has the upside. If he's hitting shots, then he can be valuable for you. So if he's one of the later guys off your bench as well, it's not a bad option. If they both want to come back on minimums, then I think that's good idea for both sides. Let's go back up and talk about Victor Oladipo. He is one of the most interesting free agents in this year's class because he has not played much with the Heat. He was traded for a bag of chips at the deadline from Houston. There was this weird dance where it's like, okay, the Rockets probably want to trade him, get something out of him, but the Heat gave up effectively what was a pick swap and Kelly Olynyk. Avery Bradley, I guess, was in there as well, but realistically, Houston didn't get much back at all. Pick swap didn't convey, so it was basically just Olynyk and Avery Bradley for Victor Oladipo, and then Oladipo gets hurt, doesn't play, down the stretch of the season and in the playoffs or anything like that. So the Heat took a gamble on his upside, him being healthy and returning to form, that we saw prior to his injury from a couple of years ago. Just never really panned out. He ends up getting hurt again. I have no idea what his value is this summer. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a minimum contract, a minimum prove it somewhere. I'm sure he's going to want more than that, and he thinks that he's worth more than that, but I would not commit long-term money to Victor Oladipo. Like, the Heat have the cap space, so if they really do want to keep him, you can offer him like a 1 year, $10-12 million contract and take a gamble on his upside potentially if nobody else wants to sign, but I would not offer long-term money to Victor Oladipo given the injury concerns. We don't know what he's going to look like when he's healthy. It's worth the gamble on the upside if you can afford to do it, and the Heat are one of the teams in the league that can afford to take a gamble on it, but like I said, I would not commit long-term money to him. If you want to sign him to a 1 year deal or maybe a 1+1 with maybe a player or a team option on the second year, I think that's fine. But you're not going to be signing Victor Oladipo to, a multi-year contract at this point in his career. It's just not going to be worth it. Moving on down here, we have Bam Adebayo, who is signed long-term. I don't anticipate him going anywhere. He's signed that massive 5-year extension on his rookie contract from, last offseason. And he's really good. He's still only 23, still getting better. He showed what he can do in their playoff run last year. Bam's a really, really good player. I anticipate him sticking around. He's a key part of this Heat team, and him and Jimmy Butler are going to be the stars, at least for the next couple of years. If Jimmy moves on eventually, Bam is going to be the guy for this team. I fully anticipate that he's going to stick with the Heat, probably through the duration of this contract, at least for like 2-3 more seasons at the very least, until we start maybe hearing some trade rumors if the team is in a bad spot. But for right now, there's no way they're trading him this offseason. He is, fully signed, fully committed, and he's going to be a member of the Heat. Couple of guys on their rookie contracts, Tyler Hero, Precious Achiuwa, both on those rookie deals there. You're going to see both these guys in trade rumors, considering that the Heat are in the market for a star if somebody becomes available. They're playing in Miami, they've got the cap space, they've got a pretty decent team, so they can potentially trade for somebody if somebody's out there, and Hero and Achiuwa would be the two guys that would be included in that deal, maybe one or both. I know they were reluctant to give up on Tyler Hero, especially we heard all that with the James Harden thing, and they were not wanting to give him up in the trade for James Harden. Who knows how much of that is true, right? You never really know for sure with rumors like that, but Tyler Hero, regressed a little bit in his sophomore season, went through a little bit of a sophomore slump. I'm not super concerned about his projection long term. I think a lot of people were ready to crown him after the bubble, and in reality, it was just a lot of hot shooting and him playing really well, when that might not be, exactly like his ceiling long term, right? Even if he's playing super well in the bubble, that doesn't mean that he's going to be a 25 point per game scorer superstar for the next 15 years. Hero's a good player. I just don't know if I, fully agree with all the hype around him that was going on last season, and he kind of showed why this year, being a little bit more streaky and not playing as well his sophomore season. So Hero's a good player, but he's definitely not off the table in terms of any trades, in my opinion. If you have to go out there, like if Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal is available, then you put him in there in 5 seconds. You don't even have to think about it. Same with Precious Achiuwa. I like him as a player. I like him as a prospect. Nice young center, showed what he can do at points this season. Kind of fell out of the rotation near the end of the regular season there, but he's a nice player still, and I would like to keep him around on the team, but again, if you're making a trade offer for a legitimate superstar, both of those guys have to be included, and that's just the price of doing business. Udonis Haslem entering free agency. If he is not on the Heat next season, it'll be because he retired, because he doesn't play for this team. He got in 1 game this past season, played 3 minutes, and got ejected. I think that was the final game of the regular season, if I'm correct on that one. And for the past, 6 seasons of his career, in 2016-17, he played 16 games, then 14, 10, 4, and 1 over the past couple of years. So he doesn't really play basketball anymore. He's kind of an assistant coach almost, a glorified assistant coach that gets to be in the locker room and with these guys and, suits up for games. He's there if they need him, but he just doesn't really play. So 41 years old, it's inspiring to see what he's been doing for them. I think he's very valuable as, a locker room presence. And if he does retire, would not be surprised to see him sign on as an official, assistant coach or a player development consultant or whatever they want to call it. Just make up a new job title for him, keep him in the organization. We'll see what they want to do. If he wants to come back and play another year, I'm sure they'll have him just because he's been around and done so much for the franchise, and he'll get to stay and do another year of doing his thing. We'll see. But Udonis Haslem's just funny, man, and good for him for being able to stick around for so long. It's definitely a unique thing for sure to be doing in the NBA, but I think, like I said, I think it's very valuable for the Heat and what they do. So good for him for sticking around. Couple of restricted free agents down here, and these are pretty massive. Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson both entering restricted free agency this summer. I don't know what's going to happen with either of these two players. Both of them were obviously in the trade rumors for James Harden when that was going on, and nothing happened. Nothing went down for them. So they stick on the Heat. Both of these guys were valuable in their finals run. Kendrick Nunn was a good find out of the G League. Similar with Duncan Robinson, him being out of Michigan and then not playing in the NBA for a couple of years after he graduated and then latching on with Miami here. Both of these guys are, have proven to be good NBA players, and they're going to get themselves paid in free agency. I think both of them are going to get a decent contract. I would pay Robinson more just because I think his shooting skills are more valuable than everything that Nunn brings to the table, but Kendrick Nunn is also a good player as well. So I think that both these guys are going to get paid. Whether that's by the Heat, I am not entirely sure. I think Miami wants to keep both of these guys, probably Robinson more so than Nunn, but we'll see what they do. They are going to have a lot of cap space, and so if they don't convince any of the top free agents this offseason to come sign with them, then that leaves up a lot of space for them to just be like, okay, well, we'll just re-sign our guys and continue to run it back. So I think if I had to put some money on it, I bet Robinson comes back at a deal around 18 to 20 million per season, maybe similar to what Davis Bertans signed last offseason, maybe a little bit more than that. And then Kendrick Nunn, I'm 50-50 on him whether he stays or goes. If he does come back, I think it'll be for around 10 to 12 million per season, maybe a little bit above or below, but I think that's his range right there. I think there's other teams out there that might value him more than Miami does at this point, but it is restricted, so they have the right to match any offer for him, and we'll see how that goes with both of those players. But pretty significant decisions coming up. I think a lot of it will hinge on what other free agents they convince to join the team, but that's why it's a big offseason for Miami, because they've got a lot of guys to worry about. Another young guy here, KZ Okpala, who has not had much of a chance to get on the court so far in his NBA career. He'll be entering his third season. I believe that he is extension eligible right now, going into the final season of his rookie contract, but it was only for 3 years to begin with, so I'm not entirely sure the rule on that. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they can extend him this offseason. Regardless, I don't think they will, just because he hasn't proven enough for them to give him enough money. He will be restricted next offseason, so they can wait and see if he gets a bigger role this year, if they want to try to give him a little bit more run and see if he can prove anything, because he just hasn't really played a lot, and so we just don't really know what he's capable of at only 22 years old. He could also be a guy thrown into a trade if they have to make a move. Another team could take a gamble on Okpala's upside, but I'm just not entirely sure on him. So I don't think there'll be an extension, even if they can give one to him. I would expect them to just take another year and get him in the rotation a little bit more, see if he can play. If he's not traded, which he very well could be. And then Dwayne Dedmon also entering free agency. I view him the same way as Bielitsa and Ariza. If you want to bring him back on a minimum, I think that's a good idea. If not, it's not the end of the world. He was actually pretty solid for them when he was brought in after the buyout, or I guess he wasn't bought out. He kind of was just sitting on his couch for most of the season after being kind of bought out in the preseason, I guess. So Dedmon's a nice center to have. I think he's a good rotation piece. And like I said, if you want to bring him back on a minimum, then that's obviously fine, but if not, then you can find other options out there. It's not the end of the world. And then Omer Yurtseven has not appeared in an NBA game so far in his career. He is a guy that I had watched as a draft prospect a couple of years back. and he is finally making his way into the NBA. Didn't, like I said, has not appeared in a game yet, and that is non-guaranteed for next year. He'll have to compete for his roster spot in camp, but we'll see if he becomes anything. Only 23 years old, from overseas, so not super familiar to a lot of NBA fans, but we'll see if he can get on the court this next season. And then you've got a couple of two-way players down here, Max Struss and Gabe Vincent, both good players. I mean, those are nice guys to have on your two-way deals. I think both of them can play. I think they both would be worthy of a roster spot if the Heat wanted to sign them to full contracts. I think it could happen for both of these guys. They've proven to be able to belong on the floor with NBA players, and that's all you want out of your two-way guys. I think both of those players are more than capable of stepping into the rotation, and they've shown some flashes at points, and that's just the Heat player development at work, because they, like I said, found Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson just basically out of nowhere, and then these two also guys who were found off the scrap heap, and the Heat picked them up, and they look like good players. So I wouldn't be shocked if either of them ended up on the main roster next season. Good guys to find on your two-way deals, so good work by them. So a lot of flexibility for them this offseason, ton of free agents to deal with, those two big team options, a lot of cap space to work with as well. So they're going to be active in free agency, looking for guys to join the team. I think Kyle Lowry is going to be priority numero uno for them, given that they were in on a trade for him prior to the deadline, but nothing ended up materializing there. So Lowry stayed in Toronto, but they could just sign him outright in free agency. So that's a name to watch there as well. If you're looking for other point guard options, Mike Conley is also out there. There's plenty of free agents that are available. Nobody huge, right? Obviously Kawhi Leonard's the big name, but we did just get the news that he had to have ACL surgery, and so he might not play for most or all of next regular season. I would assume that they would still want to sign him anyway. If Kawhi Leonard wants to come, you let him come. But if he does end up leaving the Clippers and coming to the Heat, then he wouldn't play for next season. So we'll see on that front. Not that I anticipate Kawhi to come to Miami anyway, but he is the number one free agent on the board, and they'll have cap space for him. So I guess there is the possibility of that. And then, like I said, Kyle Lowry, Mike Conley, other guys out there are also available for you. So we'll see what the Heat do. They also have, like I said earlier, the option to pick up the team options on Goran Dragic and Andre Iguodala, and then potentially trade those guys. So they're going to be active on the trade market as well. And they don't have a draft pick is the other thing. They don't have any picks this year. They have a couple of future picks that they can trade. They don't have nearly the draft ammunition that some other teams out there, but they have a little bit that they can work with. But they don't have a first or a second round pick this draft. So unless they buy a pick in the second round or trade for one, they most likely won't be adding any rookies to the roster, other than undrafted guys potentially, or maybe if they buy a second round pick, but they probably won't be picking in the first round, so nothing crazy to worry about with the draft. It's mostly going to be on free agency and then the trades afterwards, and they're going to have a lot of moves to work with, a lot of potential options out there for them, because they have all the cap space plus the restricted rights on Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson. So lots of options for Miami, and you can see why I said it was a big offseason for them, because they're going to be moving fast, wheeling and dealing. There's a lot of decisions to be made here. A couple other point guard names to watch just now that I'm looking at it. Chris Paul, although I don't expect him to leave Phoenix. Dennis Schroeder, Patty Mills, Spencer Dinwiddie, Lonzo Ball, Derrick Rose, all free agents. So those are some options at point guard for them if they feel like they do need a point guard, which has been an identified need for them over the past couple of years. And then if you're just looking at best available, DeMar DeRozan's out there, Otto Porter, Tim Hardaway Jr., potentially Evan Fournier, Danny Green, Kelly Oubre, JJ Redick, although he's really old now, Will Barton, Justice Winslow coming back. I don't know. Those are the options out there for them if they're looking for free agents. So like I said, nothing crazy. Kawhi Leonard's the big one, but a lot of people expect him back in LA, and he's probably injured anyway. So we'll see on free agency for them, but like I said, still in play for a lot of trades with those team options. So yeah, a lot of work to do. But yeah, I think that's all I have on the Miami Heat. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to. Leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Heat and their offseason plans. What are they going to do? Because this is one team that could swing the whole offseason. They're going to be very active, and it could affect what happens to a lot of other teams across the league. So would love to hear your thoughts on all of their potential moves down below. Quick business things before I go. I do want to mention this to you. I'm starting to post shorts on YouTube. I'm just going to repost some TikToks that I'm making linking over on my TikTok account to this YouTube account. So if you care about that, go boost those, because it's just kind of draft breakdowns, and I'll start putting some other stuff up there as well, just like news pieces of what's going on in the NBA, game predictions, stuff like that. So I'm putting those on YouTube now, so if you see those, that's why. It's a different kind of shorts feature that I'm trying to see if that works for me. And then I'm also over on the Halftime app now. It's kind of a startup NBA app that's on the rise right now, and I'm producing content for them, doing some live audio rooms and written posts over there as well. So go check out my account. My name is Splash City. I'll leave a link in the description for that, so you can go check that out. I'm working with them as a contributor, so would love it if you would go check that app out as well. But yeah, that's all I have for today, and I will see you guys in the next one.